Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week you're going to see me doing a little bit of soft pastel landscape painting, sort of loose, quite messy soft pastel landscape painting. But that's not the main focus of the video. It's just something to watch in the background. What I want to talk about in this video is making a living or making part of your living as an artist. Full-time artist, part-time artist, whatever. And by artist I mean all possible kinds of art. I'm focusing more on visual art, but you know, if you illustrate children's books or you design wallpaper or you paint what's sometimes called fine art or whatever, cartoonist, I'm not discriminating against anybody. I'm including everyone in this when I talk about art. We're not going to get into the weeds, very high weeds in the swampland of how to monetize your art, because there's a lot to that, and that's really a separate video. In this video we're just going to focus on what advice would I give someone who wants to follow this path. Is there any useful advice I can give? What should you focus on? That's what we're going to stick to in this video. One main point really. So we'll start with a poem. Why not? This is a poem by a guy called William Butler Yeats, and it's from about 100 years ago. He was a very successful poet in his day. He won Nobel Prize for literature, things like that. The poem is called The Lake Isle of Innisfree. Innisfree is an island. I'll just do the first part of the poem, not the whole thing. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. So it's a poem about escaping from this world and all of its nonsense. But what's it got to do with an art career? Well, I guess a couple of things. First of all, from a personal point of view, this is one of just 4 poems that I've memorized in my life. And the reason I memorized this one is it really speaks to me. Probably about 80% of me would love to escape all of this, let's say, nonsense. Wish you all the best and just go off and live in the cabin in the woods or a cabin on an island. The other 20% of me is a bit more practical. And it's saying, well, it's not really feasible as an idea, as a plan. Maybe something else. We could do something else instead. So about 6 years ago, I decided to quit my job in corporate IT. I wasn't very good at the job. I didn't like it. I didn't fit in. I wasn't living. I was just existing. So I decided, okay, need to do something. Need to find that cabin on the island somewhere. What about an art career? I hadn't been doing any art for a long time, but maybe I could get back into it. So for me, the connection to this poem for me is the art career was my cabin on the island, if you like. It was my escape from a life that wasn't really what I wanted. Another thing I can use this poem to point out is, so as I say, it was written by a guy called William Butler Yeats. His father, John Butler Yeats, was an artist, a professional artist, a portrait artist to be exact. John Butler Yeats did not start out as an artist. He started out, I think he was a lawyer or an accountant or one of those sort of professions. He quit that to become an artist. And from that day until his last day on this earth, he was never more than a step or 2 away from financial ruin, from bankruptcy and courts and people taking him to court and things like this for unpaid debts. So why? A lot of people might think, well, obviously he wasn't a very good artist. If he couldn't make any money, it's because he wasn't good at art. That's not true. Most art critics, historians agree that he was a very accomplished portrait artist. What he wasn't good at was the business side of things. As a businessman, he was pretty awful. He was useless. And this is the main point of the video. This is what I wanted to say. And this is the advice. You know, if I could go back 6 years and give myself advice, this is it. This is what I would say. Don't just focus on the art stuff. Think about the business. When you say to yourself, I'm going to quit my job and become an artist, what you're actually saying is, I'm going to start a business. Unless you're in the privileged position of not having to earn money. So, you recently won the lottery or you inherited a large amount of money or something. Most of us are not in that position. We have to pay the bills. We have to keep a roof over our head and put food on the table. We need to earn money. In that situation, I would say, learn your business skills, improve your business skills. What do I mean by that? For example, there's many different paths you can follow as a full-time artist. The more traditional path, I guess, is through galleries, exhibitions, maybe selling in art fairs or markets or any sort of face-to-face type of selling, really. And it is selling. When you start off, you need to get that gallery, that you need to persuade a gallery to represent you as an artist. There aren't that many galleries in the world. There are a lot of potential artists, people who want to be artists, who are trying to be artists. There's just far too many potential artists in the world for all of the galleries to cope with. So you have to, first of all, persuade a gallery to take you on. So how are your communication skills? That's one of the things I mean by business skills. How are your communication skills? Can you convince a gallery to take you on? And even then, when you have exhibitions and things, you don't just hang a painting on a wall and hope that it sells. You have to turn up at the exhibition. You have to talk to people, shake hands, smile. You have to convince them, or at least convince them that your art is worth looking at, that you're an interesting artist, and so on and so on. You have to sell your art, basically. It may be an indirect sell rather than a hard sell, but you're a salesperson selling a product. It's something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but that's kind of the reality of the situation. You don't have to go down that route. You could go down the online route, selling your art through online platforms, your own website, etc., etc. Doesn't have to be art. It could be art-related things. Maybe you're writing books which include your art and some writing about different things. And it could be lots of different ways. But again, there are, 1 million, 10 million, 100 million people doing the same sort of thing. And how do you stand out from the crowd? You've got all these would-be artists and they're all saying, look at me, look at me. And you're just one little voice shouting, look at me, in this vast cacophony of voices. How do you stand out? Again, back to this idea of business skills, copywriting, communication, SEO, that search engine optimization, advertising, all of these things, digital marketing. You've got to learn this stuff and you've got to get good at it, preferably if you want to have a chance of standing out, your little voice standing out from the cacophony of voices. So I'm not trying to put anybody off following an art career. I'm just trying to give advice on what it's really like and some of the skills that maybe you need to work on. Communication skills, business skills. I remember reading a sort of statistical report about people in jobs, and it was focusing on the US and the UK. And they were saying that about 80% of people who responded to this survey were not really happy in their jobs. At best, they just didn't really care about the job. It was just a way of making money, nothing more. But some people were stuck in jobs where they were very unhappy in the job. Imagine if you could get yourself into a position where you're earning your income, or even just a fraction of the necessary income, from something that you love. That would put you in a very small and a very privileged group of people. You'd be earning at least some of the money that you need from doing something that you love. So I say, I'm not trying to put anybody off making art. Far from it. I would encourage anybody who really wants to have a go at it. But I'm just trying to be realistic and give some realistic advice. Get that business skills. Get those business skills up to scratch. Communication skills, writing skills. You're going to need those sort of things to try and draw attention to yourself. And then hopefully, you'll start earning some money as an artist. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching, listening, and hopefully see you again in 2 weeks' time.